Savitri, the song divine, given as the mantra of the new cycle of humanity, in which we have just begun to enter, is essentially the story of the Divine Mother plunging herself into the darkness and night of earth, amidst its obscurity and falsehood and death, so that all this may be transformed and will be transformed. That is the assurance of Savitri, into light and life divine and the immortal's Ananda. This is the boon that Savitri brings to earth, and the pathway and the experiences of the journey. In the book of beginnings, already the master poet sets the stage for this work. This work has not begun now. In fact, creation has started for this work. The work of transformation has started from the time the creation started. This was the only objective of creation. Only now we are ready for a very radical leap. So far, the transformations have been still from one level of ignorance to another level of ignorance. And now we are ready, or at least the divine is making us ready for this radical leap from the zone of ignorance to a transformation in knowledge. As Aurobindo puts very beautifully in the Gita, essays on the Gita, from freedom to greater freedom, from light to greater light, from joy to greater joy. That should be evolution. But right now it is a painful struggle. And this stage for this evolutionary journey is Earth. Our very Earth, our Mother Earth. She has consented and accepted to offer her body for this great work. And that is its greatness. She suffers all. She struggles on behalf of all, so that ultimately the seed of Godhead that is sown in it can flower, as Aurobindo says, in mindless space. This is Earth's journey, this is Earth's yoga being done by the Supreme. And this yoga has reached a high point in its evolutionary journey where man can consciously collaborate. In Canto 2, Aurobindo introduces us to the difficulty of this work. It sounds very easy, but it's not easy because the whole past stands in the background. The entire karmic law as a machinery, mechanical machinery. Actually, if one hears the way karmic law is explained, it really appears as a meaningless machinery, almost an absurd machinery, a rigid machinery. But in essence, it's nothing else but habits of nature running into fixed grooves. And it runs and runs into certain grooves of action and consequence, action and consequence, action and consequence. And man is caught in the grip of this cycle. It's like that wheel in which we go, giant wheel in which we go up, and the very force that propelled us upward becomes a cause for bringing us down. There is a very beautiful line which we read yesterday in the issue. Guard the circling wheel's immobility. The dual tables and the karmic norm restrain in us the Titan and the God, and nature's habits, aping law, guard the circling wheel's immobility. So we think we have progressed, and by the same momentum we come down. So it moves in that circle. Someone must come and change this course. Someone must come and change this entire machinery, like we feel sometimes towards the government. Somebody should come and right at the roots change the rot. And Savitri comes to do that. But she cannot do it by any arbitrary miracle, because she has not come just for her own work. If it is just to save herself, she need not come down at all. She has come to change the very roots of creation, where weeds have grown, weeds of falsehood, weeds of obscurity. And for that she must descend and identify with them. She must go beneath the yoke if she wants to change the law. She must admit to the law, pass under its yoke. Then only she can change it. And in this work, she has no helper. She has no guide, save her strength within. So this canto, the issue, ends with these very, very powerful, magical, magnetic lines. Page 19. She matched with the iron law her sovereign right. Last 4 lines. Her single will opposed the cosmic rule. Mother says in one of her reminiscences that they will say, I was very ambitious. I wanted to change the world. This, if anything, is worthy of effort, of human effort. Aurobindo says in the Life Divine, the ascent to the divine life is the human journey, the work of works, the sole acceptable sacrifice. We all sacrifice. We sacrifice for family, for friends, for relatives, for God knows, for ourselves, for our own good, and we say we have led a life of sacrifice. But here is the work of works, the sole acceptable sacrifice, acceptable by the Supreme, without which man would be nothing more than a worm that has managed to form itself in a little speck of mud and water amidst the appalling immensities of the universe. The ascent to the divine life is the work of works. And Savitri has come to effectuate this ascent for the entire humanity, not just humanity, for earth, essentially for earth, using humanity as a pedestal. Her single will oppose the cosmic rule to stay the wheels of doom. This greatness rose. We have seen earlier, all came back to her, earth and love and doom. So by the power of love, she has come to stay the doom. At the unseen's knock upon her hidden gates, her strength made greater by the lightning's touch. Who is this unseen? Earlier in the same canto, Aurobindo tells us, the assigner of the ordeal on the path, which keeps our strength on the appointed road. That is the unseen. He is none else but the divine who comes wearing the mask of terror and death. So he knocks at the door, awoke from slumber in her heart's recess. It bore the stroke of that which kills and saves. What a powerful line this is. We are saved by this onslaught of the divine. We are saved by this abundance of divine love and its ecstasy, its clasp which shatters all limits of our ego. And we cry in pain and say, oh my dear one, what have you done to me? But to the soul, it rejoices. It experiences a great delight when the ego is smashed to bits. But the ego feels a pain. So it kills and saves. The ego is killed and the soul is saved. It bore the stroke of that which kills and saves. Across the awful march no eye can see, barring its dreadful route, no will can change. She faced the engines of the universe. A heart stood in the way of the driving wheels. Its giant workings paused in front of a mind which just would not accept defeat and death, a mind which is just not willing to admit failure. It would struggle till the very last breath. This is the heroic mother that everyone has known here, which would not just give up. We give up so soon over such small things. And she is there to change the entire machinery, and she won't give up. Its stark conventions met the flame of a soul. Conventions. If this is so, this is how it would be. All the habits, a million habits to which the earthly creature is bound, she meets them with the flame of a soul. I don't accept it. And then comes the often misquoted lines, misquoted because this follows that a magic leverage suddenly is caught that moves the veiled ineffable's timeless will. What is this magic leverage? Is the flame of the soul. This aspiration to change the scheme of things entire. Then we are ready. A prayer, a master act, a king idea can link man's strength to a transcendent force. Then miracle is made the common rule. One mighty deed can change the course of things. A lonely thought becomes omnipotent. This miracle becomes a common rule when we gather in ourselves that aspiration, the flame of the soul, which does not accept falsehood, which does not accept obscurity. It's again and again there is an onslaught of all this, and it says, no, I refuse to give up. I would fight till the last breath. Then one is ready for the transcendent force. And the next page, the last few lines. This truth broke in a triumph of fire. A victory was won for God in man. The deity revealed its hidden face. The great world mother now in her arose. Now we are linked to the whole story. This is the day when Satyavan must die, and she wakes up. And she wakes up with the great world mother. She has become one with that which she is in her essence. A living choice reversed fate's cold dead turn. Affirm the spirit's tread on circumstance. Earlier, Sri Aurobindo has described this human creature born to bend beneath the yoke, a plaything of circumstances on time's sea. But here is someone who has come to change the very circumstance. Pressed back the senseless, dire revolving wheel and stopped the mute march of necessity. A flaming warrior from the eternal peaks, empowered to force the door denied and closed, smote from death's visage its dumb absolute and burst the bounds of consciousness and time. So in Canto 1 and Canto 2, Sri Aurobindo is kind of summarized the whole thing, given us the background, the stage, and introduced the main protagonist in the play, who is going to change. Not only who is going to change, he has already told a victory was won for God in man. She has realized the world mother in herself. This itself is the assurance. What a beautiful line it is, that by the very fact that she is now aware of who she is, she brings that force. It's not a human force. Nothing can resist it. A victory was won for God in man. Now this canto is linked with the next canto and then all that follows, the series of cantos that follow it, in a very beautiful and interesting way. We have been told that she is love incarnate, she is strength incarnate, she is grace incarnate, she is the Divine Mother incarnate in matter. And she brings that transcendent, transforming power of love, the all victorious power of love. Yes, but who brings her down? Is there something below which can call her down? How she came down into this earth of obscurity? Was the earth ready? How was the preparation? All these things. So one line links it. The next canto, the Yoga of the King, starts the Yoga of Ashupati, the king. The Yoga of the soul's release. A world's desire compelled her mortal birth. It's very interesting. What can attract love but love itself? And that love, which descends from high and plunges into this world of obscurity and falsehood to save, becomes below the aspiration and love for the divine. The mother says very beautifully in one of the writings that the divine love becomes in the human heart love for the divine. That is its highest consummation. Human beings cannot embody divine love. It's too difficult. We have read earlier, in her he found his perfect shrine, vastness, eternity, the strength to bear the divine love is not possible in human nature. Not till the supramental transformation has taken place. Aurobindo says to bring down ultimately the divine love and Ananda is indeed the work. But it is not possible till the supramental transformation takes place. Because so long as world is under obscurity and falsehood, that Ananda and that love cannot establish itself. What we can experience and what is the highest possibility of divine love in human being is it turning into love for the divine. Much later in Savitri, in one of the passages, Savitri tells to death, all our earth starts from the mud and climbs to the sky. And love that was once an animal's desire, then a sweet madness in the rapturous heart, an ardent comradeship in the happy mind, becomes a wide spiritual yearning space. That same love undergoes a transformation. That love which was first an animal's desire, then becomes a sweet madness in the rapturous heart, then it becomes an ardent comradeship in the happy mind, and then it undergoes a further transformation, becomes a wide spiritual yearning space, a lonely soul passions for the alone. The heart that loved man thrills to the love of God. It's a whole preparatory journey. A body becomes his chamber and his shrine. Then is our being rescued from separateness. Then the business fails of night and death. When unity is one. What a magnificent line these are. When unity is one, when all is known, when all is clasped by love, then who shall turn to ignorance and pain? So amazing these lines are. We turn to ignorance, we love our limits. That is the whole problem. Actually, if we see the problem of this earth or problem of humanity, we say, why is God so cruel? Why He has created tragedies? Actually, a whole lot of tragedy and sorrow is because of ignorance. Everywhere we find this. And what is worse is man loves his ignorance. In one of her prayers, the mother says, what a strange thing is this ignorance. In fact, it starts like this: to turn towards Thee, to seek Thee, to unite with Thee, is to feel infinity, is to escape from time and space, is to breathe eternity. Then she laments almost. What a strange thing is this ignorance that binds men, that prevents men from seeking the very thing that will give them joy, and binds them to this ordinary school of human life, fashioned almost entirely with suffering and pain. It's a strange thing. Not only that there is ignorance, we love our ignorance. We love to love in the human way. We love to know in the human way. We love our limits. And when these limits fall away, we don't call it grace. We call it cruel hand of the torturer. So a lot of tragedy is because of this ignorance. And if the ignorance were not, what would we see? We would see forms emerging and collapsing and re-emerging. There is a beautiful poem of Sri Aurobindo, The Lost Boat. And when the tsunami had come, that poem is almost prophetic, but in a representative way. He speaks of a boat drowning in the sea. And then he says a very beautiful poem. The whole poem will not speak about, and I have to restrain myself getting into all these poems and other things. And Sri Aurobindo speaks so beautifully that yes, we see that which is lost. We don't see that it comes up again, and he is born in new countries with new minds, with new bodies. It's our ignorance which fathers our pain. And this is the main problem. Now within this ignorance, which loves ignorance, there must be somewhere in some beings something that would aspire for that. And that is Ashupati, who brings down the descent of the Divine Mother. Now this Ashupati, of course there are so many ways each one has looked at Ashupati. Sri Aurobindo speaks of Ashupati as the Lord of Tapasya, the power of concentrated spiritual endeavor, which helps man to ascend from the mortal to the immortal planes. This symbol, as well as the very fact that he has called it the yoga of the king, it's very evident as we read through it that Ashupati is not one person. Ashupati is a lineage of seers who prepared this earth through aspiration for the great descent. In Sri Aurobindo, it finds its great fulfillment because he is the avatar. But it's a whole lineage of seers. In one of his aphorisms, Sri Aurobindo speaks about Janaka. He says, Janaka is not one king. Because often people say that, oh, this is one example. So he says, Janaka is not one king, but a whole lineage of sages. So Ashupati is not just one great yogi. He embodies, it's a lineage of king sages who have embodied this aspiration, this love. Because if we divest things of the forms and name which are masks, what is there behind all these great beings? The great aspiration and love for the divine. And they have brought this and planted it in earth. And there is a whole period of preparation which they are engaged in, as a result of which the divine descends. Of course, in our context, these are obviously experiences of Sri Aurobindo. None else but Sri Aurobindo's experience. He is writing here so directly and so powerfully. But here are these lines. Who is Ashupati? One in the front of the immemorial quest. This whole aspiration, this whole desire of the world to seek, which it never finds its expression in one seer, in one who is in front of the immemorial quest. And he is not being of the earth. The mother very beautifully, when she explains this painting to Huta, there she says, who is Ashupati? She says, Ashupati is someone who has come from the higher planes. Very simply and very directly. He is a being of the higher world. These are beings of the higher world. In another place, in one of her writings, she says, who were the Vedic rishis? She says Vedic rishis were involutionary beings. They came from the higher worlds. And they came to light up that fire in nature's night. That fire of aspiration. So here is someone one in the front of the immemorial quest, protagonist of the mysterious play in which the unknown pursues himself through forms and limits the eternity by the hours, and the blind void struggles to live and see. A thinker and toiler in the ideal's air, brought down to earth's dumb need her radiant power. He comes from a higher plane, from a higher sphere, from a plane of higher consciousness, and he takes birth into a human flesh and bone and starts this, lights up this aspiration, and this aspiration brings down, attracts the divine love from above. His was a spirit that stooped from larger spheres into our province of ephemeral sight, a colonist from immortality, a pointing beam on earth's uncertain roads. His birth held up a symbol and a sign. His human self, like a translucent cloak, covered the all-wise who leads the unseen world. This is another truth that Sri Aurobindo reveals to us, that this world is not led by blind chance, a blind uncaring necessity, a blind destiny. A blind will is not destiny's architect. But behind all the randomness of the play, behind all that seems like chance, there is an all-seeing will. There is an all-wise guide. But he is masked. We do not see him. But in these great and shining ones, now we say, in the being of Ashwapati, this all-wise becomes almost a translucent cloak. One can almost feel him, almost see him. This is the beauty of the Guru. When we are face to face with the Master, what he does, he is having a body like our own. That's the only language we understand. We cannot see the all-wise who is guiding this world. But when we are face to face with someone who is born from these celestial planes, and in whom the same all-wise who is there in this world of obscurity, but hid by the forms, in such a being, he is much less masked. This is a translucent cloak. So when we come in contact with his outer being, instantly that shock unveils something deep within us, and we recognize in him the master of our souls, the beloved whom we seek, the great one to whom we wish to surrender everything. So in Ashwapati, his human self, like a translucent cloak, covered the all-wise who leads the unseen world. In him, the suggestion is that through the human mask, the all-wise was seen. Otherwise also it is there, but it is covered. Affiliated to cosmic space and time, and paying here God's debt to earth and man, a greater sonship was his divine right. God has promised that whenever this earth as it journeys through ignorance, I will always be there in some way or the other, in some form or the other. This is God's contract. Later on, Sri Aurobindo would tell us, a mutual debt binds man to this earth, to the Supreme. There is a contract. Earth may have forgotten this contract, but God remembers. And that is why there is a lore that it never happens that on this earth, some great master or the one is always present. It never happens that someone like that is not present. If it happens, the earth will sink down. So he pays God's debt to earth. There is a contract that God would, but he always keeps the greater sonship. And paying here God's debt to earth and man, a greater sonship was his divine right. Although consenting to mortal ignorance, his knowledge shared the light ineffable, a strength of the original permanence, entangled in the moment and its flow, he kept the vision of the vast behind. Even though he appeared like all of us, his life appeared on the surface like any of us, yet there was the vision of the vast behind. Aurobindo describes beautifully in his poem The Godhead how when he is going in Baroda on the carriage and suddenly the carriage meets with an accident and he sees the Godhead, the being of light, emerge out of him and hold the reins of the chariot and arrest what would have been inevitable death, a serious accident. So this Godhead breaks out off and on, but right now he keeps it behind. A power was in him from the unknowable, an archivist of the symbols of the beyond, a treasurer of superhuman dreams. He bore the stamp of mighty memories and shed their grandiose ray on human life. He brought all those beautiful memories, those symbols of the beyond, those superhuman dreams he brings to earth and implants them and nourishes the earth roots with the heaven waters. This is the work of Ashupati. And he prepares earth, this long preparation which will go on. He prepares earth for the great advent, the descent of the Divine Mother. This is Ashupati's yoga, and we'll see in the first three cantos, in these Canto 3, Canto 4 and Canto 5, three levels at which he works. The first is the release of the soul from ignorance. The embodied mind prevents any sense of unity to arise within us. We may read all this intellectually, that all is one, there is unity, but constantly we are covered by this matted hedge of sense. Aurobindo uses a very nice phrase, but few can overleap this matted hedge of sense. It's a matted hedge. We cannot see but separate. Like when we see through a hedge, what is on the other side, we see small little blotches. So these senses, they don't weave reality. They don't reveal reality. They weave a seeming reality. This is the great problem. Even though we know that all is one and there is unity and there is God in everything, this mind, this embodied mind, is a slave to the senses. And this earthly mind cannot experience. This ultimately is the big problem. If we really see at the bottom of it, this ignorance is the problem. We read all about the soul, but as long as earthly mind cannot see the soul as it sees the body, all of it will remain intellectual. And how will it see? Because within the limits of earth, it's not allowed. The earthly mind should be able to see. So first it must rise to the higher planes and bring down that light here. So Ashupati begins to rise from the embodied mind to the higher mind, the illumined mind, the intuitive mind. Of course, later on the mother would call it the new consciousness, because the whole planning has changed. But initially it's the work of preparation. Aurobindo did not have the privilege like us to breathe the supramental truth consciousness right from birth. He had to breathe this air which was sullied with all our mortality, error, the stench of sin, ignorance and death. He was born in an age when God was blown out of the universe and there was nothing else but darkness. So he had to bring down, he had to do the whole thing by himself. So he comes and he must ascend out of this mind. So freedom from ignorance is freedom from the limits of the earthly mind. The moment we come out of this earthly mind, we begin to get a sense of unity behind things. The ego begins to fail and fall. And as we ascend through higher and higher levels of consciousness, we grow into greater and greater fields of vastness. A greater and greater wideness holds us and changes us. In thought, it becomes impossible to think in small terms. In heart, it becomes impossible to feel in narrow forms. in our will, it becomes impossible to engage in narrow and small aims. This is the change which comes through a process of transformation, a change which is going to unsettle humanity, because these children are going to come and we will want them to think only of the family. They'll say, what family? Because their heart is no more cabined into small. Tell them about country in a sentimental way. What country? You still think in terms of country? Because they'll come with a wider heart and they will have a wider will. Tell them to work for career and money. They'll say, what? You people worked for career and money? I call you my parents and respect you, my grandparents. Is this what you worked for? No, I don't enjoy this. Let me find something which I enjoy. So they come to express the creative delight. Now this is today and tomorrow. But yesterday that was not the case. The embodied mind lived with a sense of separateness. Maximum it could think was for its family. That was the highest level of the ego. And if it could stretch itself, it could at the most think of maybe my tribe, my clan, maybe at the most, in some rare moments, the national sentiment. So this embodied mind lives in separateness. But as we ascend to higher and higher levels, we will see beautiful description. In fact, there is not a line which should be left out in this canto, but we'll have to go selectively. We'll see that how at each level there is a greater sense of unity. Not only unity in thought, unity in feeling. A cosmic sentiments begin to move. A feeling with which you feel not only for earth and humanity, but for everything that is around. So this is the kind of yoga, this is the kind of higher planes which are now concealed to our sight, and Ashwati begins to ascend into these planes. Climb through white rays to meet an unseen sun. This is Ashwapati's yoga. A few lines below, or the very next line, his soul lived as eternity's delegate. Normally, now you see already his soul is moved not by any separate sense, not by the sense of my mukti, which is at the bottom an egoistic impulse. Eternity's delegate. The very first impulse is, what is the cosmic work? What is it that the eternal is doing on earth? So his soul lived as eternity's delegate. His mind was like a fire assailing heaven. His will a hunter in the trails of light. An ocean impulse lifted every breath. Each action left the footprints of a god. We see that in Sri Aurobindo's life. Each action left the footprints of a god, as if God had put his signature. What Sri Aurobindo broke continues to break till this date. The place where they left Sri Aurobindo, lost Sri Aurobindo, and he writes very beautifully in one of his aphorism that they caught me and put me into a jail, something like that. And God came and turned my prison house into his dwelling place. 100 years later, in Pondicherry, I take it as a sign of his grace. In Pondicherry, recently, the IG prisons wants to have a reform. So he sends a letter, of course, even to our ashram, that we want the inmates of the prison to learn yoga. Would you help? And this has started all over. There have been vibhutis and instruments like Kiran Bedi who have started this. Each action left the footprints of a god. The Lord was lodged in one prison house as a symbol. And now all prison houses must change. Because who else but Sri Aurobindo went there into the darkest night. And one can see it all over, even in mother's life. Mother became a cosmopolitan being in every way. She asked for double nationality. Now more and more people are asking for that. She taught the women how to break free from the bounds of a circumscribed marriage which had become a stifling prison house. And today's women are rising more and more against what they perceive as a prison house. And here is Ashwapati. Each action left the footprints of a god. Each moment was a beat of pusa wings. The little plot of our mortality, touched by this thin end from the heights, became a playground of the living infinite. This is what he does. And we'll read one more passage, then take a break. So Ashwapati has become the protagonist in which this great transition from man to Superman must lay its base. Already a great journey has been traversed. His soul has gone, a traveler through time. Aurobindo writes in one of his poems, I saw my soul, a traveler through time. It has gone, changed many forms and appearances, and reached that point where all the hidden powers, all the hidden consciousness, all the hidden delight, all the hidden knowledge can emerge and find place in an earthly embodied life. This is the high transition which has laid its base. I'll skip these lines. This bodily appearance is not all, because these are well-known lines and almost all of us know it. These are lines which talk about the psychic being and how this little dumb seed, this psychic being in which the entire cosmic thought has been put, and how as it ascends, it puts out a greater and greater nature out of itself. We want to change human beings from outside, but we can do nothing but tamper with the surface. Sometimes we tamper very badly, but Divine's way is very different. He changes from within outwards. We like to talk about the supermind and psychic being first, and then help others to realize it, and then last of all think about ourselves realizing it. The Lord works from within outside. He first realizes it and then he speaks about it. This is the difference. So here the thought which comes in this passage is very beautiful, that from within this little flame which he has seated, it puts forth a higher and higher scale of nature. As this grows and ascends, a better and better being with a better and better nature emerges. So if this grows, everything grows. If this does not grow, do any amount of exercises, scaling and all kinds of punishment and reward to change a child or a man, it changes nothing. Sometimes it gives a great illusion. It creates a Charles Sobraj whom people admire because he is a polished being. Modern education has polished his surface. He is very smart and intelligent, very impressive. And all that it needs to impress today in this world is to have a nice tie. Of course, times have changed. And to wear a costly, expensive shoe and a nice shirt and full pant, speak good English and talk about McDonald's and pizza burgers and you walk in anywhere and people think you are someone very great, although your psychic being may be like a thief. So you go there and you steal. Only you steal with big names, Microsoft Inc. And you are respected as the wealthiest man in the world. This is today's values. Later on we'll see how the values change. But Divine does not care for all this. There is a very beautiful line Aurobindo writes, well known and unknown has absolutely no importance from the point of view of yoga. One man earnestly pursuing the yoga is far more important, of course in brackets, to God. He does not write that, which is understood because he is writing it, is far more important than 1,000 well-known men. And yet we, his disciples, try to catch after well-known men. Who is well-known and unknown? This is the real thing. And so we'll read a few lines. Artist of his own beauty and delight. Okay, a few lines above. Hid deep in man, celestial powers can dwell. His fragile ship conveys through the sea of years an incognito of the imperishable. This is the real thing. The imperishable, the deathless flame that cancels death in mortal things. Same, page 23, a little below. I am tempted to read it. I thought of skipping it. A spirit that is a flame of God abides, a fiery portion of the wonderful. In the entire Kathopanishad, when Nachiketa asks, see how precious this is and how little we seek it. Nachiketa asks for this truth, and Yama tells him, don't ask me this, I'll give you something else. What will you give me, sire? I'll give you as many women, as many objects of desire. I'll give you an unlimited kingdom, unlimited elephants, chariots, horses, wealth, riches. Look how precious this is, but I'll not give you this. Nachiketa is smart, the only smart man, truly wise. He says, tell me one thing, you will give all these. Will you let them be with me forever? So death says, no, I'll give you, I'll take them back. One day you have to give it. So Nachiketa says, I don't want these. In Savitri, later on, there are lines which come, all is too little that the world can give. Its power and knowledge are the gifts of time and cannot fill the spirit's sacred thirst. And yet this whole world yearns after this. It doesn't want this. For even 10 minutes to sit and concentrate to find that which is the wonderful is so difficult for man. And a whole life we spend finding all that will one day time will swallow and death will vanish, absorb. So here it is, an incognito of the imperishable. A spirit that is a flame of God abides, a fiery portion of the wonderful, artist of his own beauty and delight. It is Swambhu. It does not need to be born, yet it seems to be born through the human womb. But it creates itself, its own beauty and delight, immortal in our mortal poverty. As long as we have not discovered it, we are poor. In one of his aphorisms, he says, who is poor? Not those who are ill-born and ill-bred. Who is poor? Who are ignorant of their soul, who are satisfied with an average humanity. This sculpture of the forms of the infinite, this screened, unrecognized inhabitant, initiate of his own veiled mysteries, hides in a small dumb seed his cosmic thought. In the mute strength of the occult idea, determining predestined shape and act, it decides what it's going to be in the next life, ascending from scale to scale, passenger from life to life, from scale to scale, changing his imaged self from form to form. We cling to the images and not to the soul. He regards the icon growing by his gaze, and in the worm foresees the coming God. The entire human journey Sri Aurobindo is mapping out for us. Ashupati is already reached which point he will tell us, but he is first saying the background. He is in a rapid succession of images and events telling us how he has reached this high point. How we too can reach that high point. At last the traveler in the paths of time arrives on the frontiers of eternity. And what happens then? In the transient symbol of humanity draped. We are so attached to the symbol and we forget the real. This only is symbol. He feels his substance of undying self and loses his kinship to mortality. A beam of the eternal smites his heart. His thought stretches into infinitude. All in him turns to spirit vastnesses. We'll come back after a break.